The John Fredericks Radio Network and the John Fredericks Radio app, and I am your Godzilla of the truth in America, your oracle of the deplorables. Thanks for being with us. We're rocking and rolling. Got Virginia General Assembly coming up. Got right to work on the table there. Number one agenda. If you live in Virginia or any state in America, you need right to work in your state. Why? Because you don't have to be forced to pay union dues if you don't want to. If you want to, you pay them. If you want to join, you pay them. A lot of unions, if I was a member, I'd want to join. I don't need some government telling me what I have to do and taking money out of my pocket. And then the unions aren't accountable to me because they just confiscate the money. All that's going on now. Joining us now, this is the biggest issue we've got, in my mind, in the Virginia legislature in 2026, without a doubt, is right to work and preserving it. So long history behind it. Joining us now, Mark Mix. Mark is the president for the National Right to Work Committee. Mark, thanks for joining us.
John, it's good to be with you, and thanks for bringing attention to this issue. We're getting ready for the convening of the Virginia legislature for the General Assembly, and one of the issues that's already been introduced, one of the bills that's already been introduced, is the repeal of Virginia's right to work law, which has been in place since 1947, and has not only served individuals well, it's served the Commonwealth well, as it creates jobs and opportunities for workers across Virginia. So it is a big debate. We're gearing up for it, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it this morning.
So listen, a state senator, I think it's State Senator Carol Foy, right? One of the leftists, basically has a bill, but she's spreading lies. I mean, it's just amazing. They just make up stuff. She's spreading lies about right to work and what it means and the history of it in Virginia, calling it a racist bill, et cetera. All the nonsense you get. Can you expose some of these lies for us, Mark Mix?
Yeah, John, look, if she would have spent maybe 15 seconds looking at the history of organized labor and the stand they took on African-American black workers, they were the problem back when compulsory unions passed back in the 1930s. They discriminated against black workers all the time. Think Walter Reuther, think the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. There was a Supreme Court case, John, in 1944 that lays this out better than I can. And this was A. Philip Randolph, one of the African-American black union leaders, that stood up and said, we've got to fight for the railway employees in the United States. And there's a case, you can look this up. It's not hard to find. It's called Louisville-Nashville Railroad versus Steel, 1944, United States Supreme Court. What that said was that the railway unions would not recognize black workers, would not let them join their union, even though these white union officials had the power over the employment conditions of all the workers in the railroad. They said, we're not going to represent you. And so this is where the Supreme Court stepped in and said, look, you got this power to force everyone into this collective. They have to be represented by you. They have to be a member of the union in order to work back then. And you're saying you're not going to represent them because of the color of their skin? That's why right to work matters, John, because workers now can say, if unions do that crazy stuff, which they still do today, we're finding racism in the union movement today, and Senator Foy would just, again, look for 10 seconds, she would find it. It's really an outrage that she makes this stuff up and has to basically lay these layers of untruths on top of an issue that is so simple that every American understands it. Should you be forced to pay a private organization to get or keep a job? The answer by the great majority of Americans and the great majority of Virginians is no. Should you give the ability of a worker to hold union officials accountable by not letting them get into your wallet unless you let them? Absolutely, Americans agree with that. So this is just another effort to basically cloud the air with something that's just not true.
I mean, it's amazing. Like they've lost the argument in Virginia, right? Every poll that comes out, Virginia support right to work. And this is not just Virginia. Across the country, people support right to work, enabling them to not join a union if they don't choose to. And if they do, they do. But then the union's accountable to them because they don't take their money. It's not compulsory. So if you're not getting the representation you want, you disjoin and stop paying. That holds them accountable. But look, in order for them to get this to fly here, they have to ignore the people and spread lies and pull out the race card.
Yeah, exactly. And it's right out of the playbook, the union playbook, John. I mean, they want to separate people. They want to divide people. They want to make it sound like giving an individual the freedom to choose whether or not they want to support a private organization is somehow racism. I mean, this is a canard that they've used over and over and over again. And frankly, the American public and most Americans are getting very, very tired of it. But it's a textbook page. I don't know what chapter or what page it is in the book they constantly use to misrepresent things. And this one couldn't be more clear. Literally, if Senator Foy would go on the internet and pull up racism in labor unions, she would find that's where it started when Franklin Roosevelt said, okay, union officials, whether it be, well, not Roosevelt didn't do it, but 1926 under the Railway Labor Act, which sparked that Supreme Court decision I already mentioned, Louisville-Nashville Railroad versus Steel. Look it up. You'll find it. It's not a big deal. But again, they want to disassemble the very simplicity of giving an individual worker the ability to choose whether or not they believe a union deserves their money or not. And in Virginia, if they repeal right to work, workers will wake up the next morning when this goes into effect, and they will see a deduction in their paycheck and say, "What is this?" And if they don't want to pay it, if they don't pay it, they will lose their job. It's that simple, John.
So how do we get the truth out there and stop the lies from the left about right to work? And then we'll get to why they're doing this. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. Well, this is how we do it, John. We have conversations about it, and we ask people to go back and do their research instead of taking, a state senator's view on this as something that's, cut in stone. It's not. I mean, if she goes and looks on the internet, a couple of things this morning I went and looked at. You look at the NAACP. The people that represent Black workers across the country and Black people across the country, they're the ones that make the biggest case about racism in the American union movement. The AFL-CIO kind of paints it nicely and say, oh, yeah, we're for all this. But if you look at the history of the AFL-CIO and Samuel Gompers, you'll find the basis for this and discriminating against Black workers all the way from the late 1800s all the way up till today. In fact, John, we've represented, for example, Black firefighters in firefighting institutions. I think Kansas City, St. Louis, we've done that, where they've been discriminated against because of the color of their skin. And if you look at the manufacturing, and particularly the construction industry, that's where it really is. Think of this Davis-Bacon bill, John, that passed in the 1930s, that basically was designed to keep Black workers out of the construction industry as they moved to the north. That's a racist bill. Union officials won't talk about that. Politicians like Senator Foy will not talk about that. They won't say anything about that discrimination that existed historically and still exists to this day, and yet they'll use it as a talking point about forcing workers to pay union dues or fees to get or keep a job. It's outrageous, and it's just not true.
Mark Mix with us. He is the president and CEO of National Right to Work. Mark, the far left hates right to work, right? They want to get rid of it in every state. They try to pass a federal bill, as you remember, that we fought, basically federalizing it to get rid of right to work. Yeah. Abigail Spanberger voted for that twice. Yeah. Why does the left not want to give a worker in a trade that might be represented by a union? Why is the left so adamant about not giving that worker the choice of whether or not to join the union, which also hand in hand goes with holding union leadership accountable to their needs? Because if you confiscate the money, you're not accountable. If every 2 years you have to re-up, then you got to get the people to re-up, so you have to do what they're asking. You're accountable to members. Why are they so opposed to this, Mark?
It's the money, John. You know that. I mean, they're one of the biggest political players in the country. Every 2 years, they spend literally billions of dollars to maintain the power and privilege they've been granted by government. So, I mean, I hate to say it's as simple as follow the money, but sometimes it's as simple as follow the money. Money means political power. Union officials have power because government's granted that power to them. They are basically wards of government action. So everything that union officials have to do now has to be basically directed towards state legislatures, the United States Congress, because their power is a derivative of government action. when it first started back in 1935, 1933 actually, when Roosevelt introduced the National Industrial Recovery Act with the National Recovery Administration, they tried to basically impose this, and the Supreme Court said, no way, no how. I mean, this is a violation of the 10th Amendment, a violation of the non-delegation clause. It had all kinds of problems that a unanimous Supreme Court said no to. And then when Roosevelt threatened to pack the court and add 6 new justices back in 1935, after the court had struck down the National Industrial Recovery Act, the Wagner Act came right back on it. And all of a sudden, the Supreme Court's threatened with this court packing scheme. And literally, it was this issue, along with maybe 2 or 3 others, that basically Roosevelt said, if you don't agree to my position on this, i.e. giving union officials the power, 1, to force their representation on workers, and 2, to force workers to pay dues or fees to have their representation taken away from them, we're going to pack the court with 6 additional justices. As you know, Article 3 doesn't stipulate how big the Supreme Court is. It's simply a matter of Congress saying, okay, the Supreme Court will be 10 or 15 or whatever. Roosevelt clearly had the power to do that. And this power is now manifested to a point where union officials are saying the only way we can survive is to have government on our side. And the only way you get government on your side is to have money to play politics. And they are huge players in the political structure.
So this is fascinating. So this right to work debate goes all the way back to FDR.
Yeah.
And it was the genesis, the catalyst for him wanting to pack the court, because he saw the potential of unions as being able to give millions of dollars at the time. Now it's billions.
They were just millions of dollars back then, John. Just millions. Yeah.
Millions of dollars back then to the Democratic Party to secure their power base. It goes all the way back to that.
Indeed, it does. When Congress granted or passed the Railway Labor Act in 1926, it was the first time that really unions had realized that going to the legislature to get their power was a really neat business model. In fact, Samuel Gompers, who I mentioned earlier, the father of the American labor movement, recognized that the delegates of the AFL, or the American Federation of Labor, were getting interested in this government power that could be granted to them. And in his final speech in El Paso, Texas in 1924, he said this. He said, the workers of America adhere to voluntary institutions. Anything else that tries to coerce will destroy a movement that, if brought together through voluntary means, is inherently stronger than anything that's cobbled together through force. And yet, force is now the primary tool of organized labor in America today. To your point on the introduction, any worker that wants to join a union or pay dues to a union can do that. The law protects that. But the law also in Virginia from 1947 till today says you can't lose your job if you decide that the union is not doing what you'd like. And you can withdraw or withhold your financial support from that union. It's literally that simple. We believe that allows workers to hold union officials accountable for what they do, whether it be in Richmond or it's Washington, D.C. And that accountability is the secret to right to work. It says, I will watch what you do. I'll pay attention to what you're doing. And if what you're doing is I disagree with, then I'm not going to support that. And you can't force me to do that. That's really the simplicity of all this. But yet Democrats say we've got to repeal it because, somehow it's for the working man. It's not. It's for union political power.
This is, I love having you on because this is such an educational thing. I mean, people don't realize, they think, right to work, they're against unions. No, we're not against unions. We're for unions, but we're for the union members being able to hold their leadership accountable. I mean, who is not in favor of that? And if your union is doing a good job, you want to join it. I remember when I lived in the Chesapeake area in Virginia, I used to go to the cleaners there, and there was a gentleman. He might be tuned into me now. I'm not going to give you his name, but he was there forever, and he was a young man, and he wanted to join the ship building effort. He got his trade, and I remember he finally got past all that, went to the vocational school, became a welder at the Newport News Shipbuilding. And I remember seeing him, he still worked there Saturday, and how proud he was to have gotten his union card from Newport News Shipbuilding, whatever that union is. I think it was the steel workers that represented him. And he showed it to me, and he really worked hard for that, how proud he was of that. That was voluntary. And he was proud to be in that union. He fought to get in it and all the benefits that came with it. And, he was a voting member. I mean, isn't that what you want your union to be?
You would think, John, that's exactly right. You know, I've told you in the past, my stepfather was a 32 member of the Machinists Union. He was a welder at a plant in Western New York. And at that point in time, I mean, he was a big fan of his union. It's only after he passed away that we kind of realized that, you know, the things they said that they had done for him weren't necessarily the things they said they were done for him.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, he proudly was a member of the Machinists Union. But that's the point. I mean, you don't need to force people if you're doing good work.
Right.
I mean, you know, I guess, John, if I presented you with an opportunity to mandate that every single person in the United States, if they turned on a radio, had to listen to your show, I mean, you'd probably like that. But the quality of your show would diminish dramatically because you just wake up and say, hey, I can say anything I want and people can't turn me off. People have to listen to me. And that's the unique power of compulsion that union officials have under the law. And the only break to that, well, there's other remedies, but the most important remedy is the financial remedy. And that is hold union officials accountable with money. That makes the most impact on most people's lives. I had a cost accounting teacher when I was at James Madison University. He was a Southern gentleman. And forgive me for saying it this way, but he came in, it was 8 o'clock in the morning and very few people showed up as we got into the class. I showed up because I was paying my own tuition bill and had to. And he stood up one day and he said, you know, you may be able to take a man's wife and you may be able to take his dog, but if you stick your hand in his pocket to get his money, you've got his attention. And that is true. And basically what happens here is union officials have got the ability to stick their hand in a worker's pocket and take that money out, whether they want to be taken out or not. Right. You're getting attention of the worker when you take their money out. And it just doesn't make any sense to compel that in the American system, this grand experiment in self-government. It doesn't make any sense.
So you've had right to work in Virginia since 1947.
Yeah.
And back then, even when the Democrats had control, you had Democrats that were reasonable. You have a conversation with them. Yeah. Now you can't because they want the money, they want the power. And what Carol Foy is, what Senator Foy has said, it's a bunch of lies. She doesn't even know the history. I mean, I thought her bill and the things she said, I thought was embarrassing. It's like you don't even know what the history is. Like you're clueless to what this is. And of course, you've never been involved in it. But look, in order to stop this from right to work going away in Virginia, what was that movie, right? A Few Good Men. You're going to need some Democrat somewhere to say, you know, probably we shouldn't do this. And it's going to be a tough order to get that because they're under such pressure now from the communist left wing of their party, and they see compulsory unionship as a way to have perpetual power in Virginia.
Yeah, you know, hopefully there's a conscience there that will say, hey, look, you know, union officials have unique powers over workers, not only here in Virginia, but across the country. 26 states have right to work laws. And John, we've talked about the individual freedom issue about it, but let's talk briefly about the economic impact of it. I mean, Governor Youngkin and governors before him all said that right to work was an important part of the economic plan that Virginia has crafted over the years to make it and the number one state for doing business 3 out of the last 6 years by CNBC, and a state that attracts innovative companies from California, from New York, from overseas to come here. And one of the questions is asked, and you can ask most economic development people, you can ask Governor Youngkin, one of the questions they ask is, are you a right to work state? Whether you agree with that or not, that's a question they ask. And we know from studies of site selection companies that consult, they say that over half of all industries looking to expand or relocate, and that means invest capital in a state, ask the question about right to work. And if it's not a right to work state, they immediately kick it out from consideration. You look at the automotive industry, John, where it's happening right now. It's happening in right to work states. Over 80% of all the automotive manufacturing in the United States today takes place in right to work states. That's not a surprise. It's an idea that these people have that it's a place where we can operate and we can actually talk to our employees and have a relationship with our employees without a third party getting involved. And if the employer violates that relationship with the employees, guess what? A union comes in and they represent those workers and amplify their voice in the workplace. So there's a responsibility with the employer as well. But having an environment where we allow employers and employees to talk to each other absent a third party that really calculates this as a zero-sum game. If the employer wins, we must be losing. That's not the case anymore, John. We know that. And right to work is an important part of that economic equation as well. And I think Governor Spanberger will learn that very, very quickly.
we don't know what's going to happen with her. You really can't predict from one day to the next. I know a lot of people thought she was going to govern as a moderate. I was one of the ones who said at the beginning she's not. If you look at her record in Congress, she voted with AOC virtually 100% of the time. If you look at who she put in there as her DEI commissioner, I mean, it's a person who basically said the U.S. Constitution should be dissolved. I mean, she is so left wing. But look, we're going to see what happens. Let's get off Virginia a second. Is there another state where you've got right to work, which is at risk?
No, we really don't, John. We had a couple of issues. Obviously, it's like the infantry probe or the cavalry probe. They probe year to year in certain states, and they'll introduce a bill to repeal right to work. Generally, when we identify it and we write to legislators about it, the fight goes away. We have concerns in Arizona, we have a concern in Nevada, we have a concern in other places. But basically, when we bring it up and we have a fight, like the last time we had a fight about it in 1991 in Commonwealth, Virginia, I mean, as soon as we found out about it, we got mobilized, Virginians mobilized on it, and it went away. And we haven't had an issue on it since then. Although Terry McAuliffe, when he was running for governor, if you remember, John, he indicated that he would sign a right to work repeal bill if he was elected governor of Virginia. He was the first statewide candidate on the Democratic side to say that, running for governor, I think. And there may be others that did that. But certainly, Governor Youngkin immediately used it against McAuliffe, and Youngkin won going away. There were other issues like the education issue in Loudoun County, and that's another issue that Spanberger probably is on the wrong side of, I suspect. She didn't really try to articulate that during the campaign, much like her position on right to work, where she said, well, we don't want to know if we want to get rid of it, we want to reform it. But John, how do you reform something that's simply binary? She says, do you pay dues to keep your job or don't you? Do you pay fees to keep your job or don't you? There's very little room for reform in that equation, in my calculation.
The whole thing was a fraud. Is there a state where you're on offense to get it where you don't have it? Tyler, hold the music a second. Is there a state where you're on offense?
Yeah, we're working on right to work bills in Montana and New Hampshire and a few other places where we're going to have it. I mean, Michigan is now having a serious debate over whether or not they want to get it back after they repealed it. We've had one state, Louisiana, that repealed it back in the 1960s. We got it back in 1975. I think in Michigan, the interesting part about it, John, is the law was in effect in Michigan for 10 years. And everyone looked at it, and all the doomsayers who said if we pass right to work, this is the end. The sun doesn't come up in the east anymore. The roads crumble. Apparently, the roads in Michigan were already crumbling, but that wasn't our fault. But they said it was going to be the end of the world, and yet it's not. Michigan had their best decade in economic development and employment growth and manufacturing job growth during the time when they had right to work. Guess what? Now that it's repealed, every single county in Michigan reports a higher unemployment rate than the national average. I mean, they're unfortunately leading the country in the unemployment rate. It's just the economic policy makes sense, but more importantly, the individual policy makes sense. And it really is a non-debate. And yet the only way they can go ahead and attack it is by making stuff up like we've already talked about today. And hopefully people will do what they need to do to maintain this grand experiment in self-government. Do the research, look it up, and you'll find out that giving workers the ability to choose whether or not to support a labor union shouldn't be a condition of their employment. It should be something that's basic to our fundamental rights in this country.
Who needs facts when you have left-wing dogma to go on, right? They don't need facts. You just go with the rhetoric. All right, to Michigan, I just got to ask you this question. Have you guys talked to Gretch? What is her position on this?
I'm sorry, say that again, John. I have trouble hearing.
Have your team in Michigan, have you had discussions with Governor Whitmer? Have you talked to Gretch?
We haven't yet. We've had the discussion with folks in Michigan. She's not running again. So she has, she's running for president, I think, or whatever. Maybe like Abigail Spanberger will do in a couple of years here. We'll see. But, what we have to do in talking to politicians is important, but it's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is talking to voters and talking to people and saying, this is what this is about. Because, look, in every legislative body in the country, whether it be Washington or Richmond or Sacramento, California, there's motorboats and there's sailboats. The motorboats you really can't do much about. They know what they want to do, and they go to their destination. They put it up. The sailboats are the ones that are important. We have to create enough wind to dictate how the sailboat reacts to that wind. And the only way you do that is to mobilize people and talk about the issue and get the word out about what's happening. And then we create enough wind that they have to tack and they have to jive and do all those sailing things I don't know much about. But we know that's the secret to winning political battles, John.
Sounds like the secret sauce is coming on my show every week, based on what you said. Listen, thank you. I got to tell you this, Mark. I love having you on in the morning. You're the only person that comes on that has the same level of energy and passion that I do at 7 or 8 in the morning. So thank you.
It's coffee, John. It's coffee.
I
Yeah.
got my
What kind of coffee am I supposed to drink, John? What kind of coffee?
Great segue. That's why I love this guy, folks. This is a great segue. 1775 Coffee, the official sponsor of the John Fredericks Show. Best coffee ever made. It's all we drink here. 1775. Go to 1775coffee.com. Promo code Godzilla, 10% off. I get the dark roast. I switch to medium sometimes in the afternoon. I got the beans. I got the grounds, depending on how much time I have. I just got in early today, ground up a new batch, made myself a pot. Hang on. Damn, Mark, that is good coffee. Go to 1775.com. Mark makes always fired up, always got the passion. You definitely match me. You're about the only person I get on that has the same amount of energy that I do in the morning. So thank you for that. Mark, people want to follow you. Where do they go?
Yeah, they can follow us at nrtwc.org. That's the committee's website where we do our legislative programs, nrtwc.org.
Also want to give a shout out. I got to give a shout out to Jacob, who's on your team. Very responsive to us, always gets back, gets everything set up. He's a good young fellow, really an asset to your organization. So shout out to Jacob.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Mark. Talk soon. We're going to be right back. Paul Alexander next.